On a chilly morning in Southfield, a 9-year-old black boy stepped onto a city bus by himself for the first time, tightly holding a dollar bill. He felt a thrill at the prospect of finally tasting a slice of pizza. However, upon witnessing an injured woman being berated and forcibly removed from the bus by the driver due to her lack of funds, the boy resolved to take action that left everyone in shock. Unbeknownst to him, this seemingly minor gesture of goodwill would pave the way for a more radiant future, one he had never even imagined. Southfield awoke beneath a shroud of gray clouds, the sort that hung heavy against the skyline as if issuing a silent warning. The morning chill crept in through the cracked window frames and the drafty doors of a dilapidated apartment building where Marcus resided with his 9-year-old son, Tyrese. Their unit, a humble 2-room space adorned with peeling paint and second-hand furniture, resonated softly with the gentle sound of water boiling on the stove. Tyrese settled at the modest kitchen table, tugging on his well-loved sneakers. As Marcus strode restlessly by the window, phone clutched tightly, irritation growing with each unanswered call. He had made plans with Miss Dolores, his elderly neighbor from 2 floors down, to accompany Tyrese to school today. But now she was unresponsive. Her voicemail echoed for the 5th time, and Marcus massaged his temple, his gaze flickering between the phone and the wall clock. He had 20 minutes to spare before the bus departed for the warehouse job he had been hoping to secure for weeks. Not attending that interview might result in yet another month without a reliable source of income. The rent had slipped past its due date. The fridge stood almost bare, and the only thing remaining in his wallet was a solitary dollar bill. "Dad," Tyrese said, pulling softly at his coat sleeve, "I recall the path. I am capable of taking the bus on my own." Marcus lowered himself to connect with his son's gaze. "Ty, you've never tackled that by yourself. It's more than simply being aware of the stop. It's essential to remain vigilant and keep a close proximity to the driver. Refrain from engaging with others. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "I'll be fine," Tyrese said, his voice imbued with a subtle strength that resonated deeply with Marcus. "I'm not an infant." Marcus paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. The choice gnawed at him. He aspired to be the type of father who was consistently present, who always shielded, yet the harsh realities of life imposed their own requirements. He delved into his pocket, retrieved the soft, creased dollar bill, his last, and placed it gently into Tyrese's small hand. "This will get you on the bus," he said, his voice strained. "Hold on to it. Refrain from using it for snacks. Please enjoy that pizza at school, all right? You've been discussing it all week." Tyrese nodded, his fingers gripping the bill as if it were a treasure. As Marcus observed his son step outside, the backpack rhythmically swaying with each movement, a tightness of remorse settled in his heart. He had entrusted his son to a world that often failed to recognize the innocence of black children, yet today he felt he had no alternative. The Southfield city bus sighed to a halt at the corner, its aging metal frame creaking under the burden of yet another weary morning. Tyrese lingered at the curb, the dollar bill clenched firmly in his hand. The paper was gentle in his father's grip, frayed from countless exchanges for far too little. It wasn't merely a dollar. It represented his breakfast. It was the piece of pizza that had occupied his thoughts since Monday. That was the final thread of control Marcus could relinquish, and now it belonged to him. He ascended onto the bus with deliberate slowness, casting a glance at the driver, a middle-aged white man whose face sagged and bore a permanent scowl, as if it had been etched there by the weight of years filled with resentment. The man averted his gaze, merely reaching out with an open palm. Tyrese slipped the dollar inside, his fingers hesitating to release their grip. For a moment, the boy paused, his gaze darting to the vacant seats beyond the turnstile. Then I returned my attention to the driver. "Are you unable to hear?" The driver grumbled, yanking the ticket from the machine and thrusting it in his direction, all while avoiding eye contact. Tyrese accepted the stub with a subtle nod. "Good morning," he said, yet it lingered in the atmosphere like a faint murmur that went unnoticed. The boy shifted to the rear of the bus, settling into a window seat, his backpack perched in his lap like a protective barrier. The city slipped by, a haze of gray, with chain-link fences and fractured sidewalks, where faces bore the weight of sleepless nights and pockets felt painfully light. Within the confines of the bus, the heater emitted a series of loud clicks. A mature woman quietly wept behind him. A cough echoed through the room. Tyrese maintained his gaze ahead, his heart racing slightly more than he was willing to acknowledge. Once more, the thought of the pizza crossed his mind. Warm, gooey cheese, a perfectly crunchy crust, and that nostalgic little square tray from school days. It had been weeks since he last experienced it, not since Marcus began to stretch their groceries to the limit. He made an effort to suppress his anger regarding that. His father toiled tirelessly, pouring his all into their lives. Yet there were moments of pain, a longing for the small joys that other children enjoyed without a second thought. Tyrese cast his gaze downward at his sneakers. One lace was tattered to near oblivion. The left sole fluttered gently with each step. The dollar has vanished now, and he had made that choice. He had reassured himself that it was acceptable. The pizza can hold off for now. Yet, it did not quell the knot that coiled in his stomach, a blend of hunger and a weightier sensation, a sense of comprehension. He had outgrown that stage, no longer a child. At 9 years old, he found himself alone on a city bus for the very first time. Though the world around him might not recognize him as a child deserving of care, he was determined to reach school. He was determined to keep it all intact. That was exactly what Marcus required of him. It was the embodiment of strength. At the fourth stop, the bus doors creaked open with a weary sigh, allowing the chill to seep in once more. A woman ascended the first stair, pausing as if the very atmosphere around her were urging her to retreat. Tyrese glanced away from the window, his gaze captured by her presence, not due to any noise or eccentricity, but because there was an unmistakable quality about her that felt out of place. Her coat hung loosely, inadequate against the chill, with frayed sleeves at the cuffs. Mud clung stubbornly to the edges, and a subtle streak of blood traced one cheekbone, the sort of detail that only catches the eye of the observant. Tyrese existed. She navigated with caution, as if she had just been fleeing or concealing herself, her breath still ragged. Her hair, while untidy, was clean, and her posture, despite her attempts to hunch, suggested a person unaccustomed to diminishing in presence. A delicate embroidered logo emerged from beneath her coat collar, subtly present, reminiscent of a thread from a past life. She delved into her coat pocket, probing, then paused, her hands quivering. "I misplaced my wallet," she informed the driver, her tone measured, nearly too refined for the situation at hand. "I simply need to reach Midtown Medical. I promise I can settle the payment later." The driver remained utterly unfazed. He reclined, a scoff escaping his lips. Everyone seems to have a tale to tell. The words lingered in the atmosphere, sharp and stinging. Tyrese recoiled, even though the words weren't directed at him on this occasion. A handful of passengers glanced up, only to avert their eyes once more, almost immediately. "Please," the woman implored. "I was robbed. I have nothing with me." "Then get off my bus," the driver snapped, leaning forward from his seat. "This isn't a charity ride. Do you really think I'm naive?" Everyone executes the same frustrating strategy. Move forward, shed a tear, fade away. Tyrese observed her lips quiver as she parted them, only to seal them once more. She held back tears, her expression taut, reminiscent of adults striving to maintain composure in the presence of others. "I'm not deceiving you," she murmured. "I have no intention of seeking anything without cost." "You're definitely not getting anything for free today, that's for certain," he snapped. "You're hurt, and for all I can tell, you're under the influence or even in a worse situation. Please refrain from causing any issues on my bus." Tyrese felt a constriction in his chest. The driver's tone held a certain weight, the way he uttered "you people," reminiscent of how that security guard would trail Marcus in the store, feigning interest in price checks. It transcended mere regulations. It hinged on the identity of the inquirer. The woman retreated a step toward the door. Her face burned with shame, and soon the tears began to flow, quiet and unhurried. Silence enveloped the scene, as if time itself had paused. Neither the man carrying the briefcase nor the woman wearing earbuds. A young man, 2 seats away, fixated on the ground as if it held the secrets of the universe. Tyrese clutched the edge of his seat, his legs tense and unyielding. His stomach twisted, not from hunger this time, but from a more acute sensation. Regret. Powerlessness. He felt insignificant, devoid of strength. Yet, the woman remained there, her gaze fixed on the driver, as if pleading for a fragment of dignity. Yet he possessed none to offer. Tyrese found himself on his feet without recalling how he got there. His body acted instinctively, outpacing the thoughts that tried to hold it back. His palms were slick with sweat, and his heart raced as if it were attempting to escape from his chest. The woman remained at the front of the bus, her shoulders hunching under the burden of stairs and quiet, while the driver's words cut through the air, sharp as shards of glass. The remaining passengers stood frozen, held captive by the silent code of urban existence. Stay detached, avoid lingering glances, and keep your feelings subdued. Yet Tyrese was just 9 and he truly cared. He delved into the front pocket of his hoodie, his fingers grazing the vacant fabric where that final dollar once resided. Departed. In that moment a memory surfaced. He had carefully placed the transfer stub in his backpack. The driver was oblivious, lost in his own murmurs of discontent. Tyrese's fingers clumsily navigated the zipper. Within a mesh pouch lay a solitary dollar bill, meticulously flattened and folded 4 times. He gazed at it intently. It was the day for pizza. He could already savor it, the cafeteria tray, the cheese bubbling on top, the way the other kids laughed and shared bites as if it were the most natural thing in the world. For him, it was always significant, and now he grasped the decision in his hand, his own desires or her honor. Tyrese inhaled unsteadily, moved into the aisle, and advanced, the crumpled dollar gripped firmly in his hand. Here, he said, his voice quiet yet unwavering. I will cover her expenses. The driver flickered his eyelids. Excuse me? For her ride, Tyrese exclaimed more forcefully, extending the money forward. She is welcome to take mine. The man regarded him as if he were jesting, as though the notion of a young black boy achieving something commendable simply didn't register. Is this your mother or what? Tyrese gave a slight shake of his head. What makes it important to you? Tyrese remained silent. He extended the dollar once more. A cough shattered the stillness behind him, followed by the unmistakable jingle of coins. An elderly gentleman at the rear fished into his pocket and casually dropped a handful of nickels into the tray. A woman in the center whispered softly, "Allow the boy to take a seat." Her voice wavered slightly. The driver let out a sharp breath through his nostrils, grabbed the bill from Tyrese's grasp, and gestured to the woman as if he were bestowing a great kindness upon her. "Come on in. Please refrain from causing a disturbance." The woman strolled down the aisle at a leisurely pace, her cheeks still tinged with color. She halted next to Tyrese, her eyes large and rimmed with red. "Thank you," she murmured. He remained silent, merely nodding once before returning to his seat, his legs trembling now. As he settled into his seat, his gaze fixated on the ground, his fists gripped firmly on his knees, his heart pounding so fiercely that he imagined everyone could hear it. It had transcended the value of money, transcended mere pizza. It was in the way that driver had gazed at her, addressed her as if she were beneath humanity. Tyrese recognized that expression from past encounters. In shops, through the manner in which educators addressed Marcus, within the quiet that consumed compassion all too readily. Once more, the bus glided ahead, silent as a gentle flurry of snowflakes. Yet a shift had occurred. Not the universe, not at this moment. Yet perhaps there lies something within him. The woman lowered herself next to Tyrese cautiously, as though uncertain that the seat would support her weight. She hesitated before responding. Her fingers quivered in her lap, pale knuckles gripping the tattered edge of her coat, eyes darting toward the driver as if anticipating another strike, this time with words more cutting than fists. Initially, Tyrese averted his gaze from her. His eyes remained locked on the back of the seat ahead, as though it could absorb the relentless thrum in his chest. The warm air from the vent above hummed like static, drowning out the heavy, uncomfortable silence that enveloped them. Then she murmured, "You didn't need to do that." Tyrese shrugged, his gaze fixed elsewhere. "Indeed, I did." She blinked, her gaze shifting slightly in his direction. Her voice took on a gentle quality. "What is the reason?" He paused in silence for a moment, then finally spoke, his gaze still cast downward. "Because no one else would take the initiative." The woman released a breath, unsteady and brief, as if she had been waiting to exhale for far too long. "I have no words," she whispered. Tyrese finally turned his gaze toward her. Her eyes remained puffy and red, and the corner of her mouth was just a bit swollen. He delved into his backpack, sifting through wrinkled papers and scattered pencils, and finally extracted a lone napkin. Creased, aged yet tidy. He extended it forward. She approached it with caution, her eyes fluttering as she pressed it gently against her cheek. "May I ask what your name is?" she inquired, her tone delicate. "Tyrese?" He spoke, his tone unwavering now. "What do you have to share?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Close." A moment of silence hung in the air before Tyrese spoke softly. "That individual behind the wheel? He raised his voice at my dad once. Because we were lacking 10 cents. Forced us to disembark. We made our way home on foot. He didn't express it as if he were seeking sympathy. He spoke of it as if it were merely a detail woven into the fabric of his existence, an ordinary aspect of life in the city he called home. But then he raised his gaze to hers, a spark of something deeper glimmering in his eyes. At that moment, fear gripped him, he confessed. "However, I feel no fear at this moment." That was the moment. No elaborate oration, merely honesty, compact and weighty like a stone lodged in the heart. Nia nodded thoughtfully, delicately folding the napkin between her fingers. Her lips parted, yet the words she wished to express lingered in the space between gratitude and guilt, leaving her silent. She remained seated, next to the boy who had presented her with more than just $1. He had extended to her the opportunity to reclaim her position in the world. As the bus arrived at the 6th stop, Tyrese rose, tightening the straps of his backpack against his shoulders. His feet seemed to weigh more than they had earlier that day. Nia remained still at the outset. She observed him ascend, an enigmatic expression dancing across her features, a blend of awe and longing. Tyrese glanced at her, offered a subtle wave, and then continued down the aisle in silence. There was no need for him to utter a farewell. In his thoughts, this was finished. Hold on a second. An action taken out of necessity for another's sake. Yet Nia kept her gaze fixed on him as he walked down the aisle. She observed him as he moved past the driver, whose gaze flickered away, leaving her uncertain whether it was out of shame or irritation. She observed him as he ventured into the muted dawn, the cold air brushing against his skin, his breath escaping in delicate wisps. He forged ahead without a glance behind. She leaned her face momentarily against the bus window as it departed, observing the boy diminish in size, his backpack jostling with every stride. Her hand lingered gently on the glass, the napkin still held tightly in her other grasp. The napkin now seemed like a delicate thread, drawing her toward something she feared losing, something she wished to remember. She inhaled unsteadily, her hand diving into her coat pocket to retrieve a pen, small silver, a memento from a bygone era that now seemed far away. She glanced around and ripped a fragment of the transfer slip that was still wedged into the seam of the seat. Then, with swift precision, she jotted down everything that came to mind. Route 14, 6:52 a.m., 6th and Grand, close to Braveview Elementary. She couldn't quite pinpoint the reason, not at this moment, but an instinct within her insisted that this knowledge would be crucial, that the story was far from finished. Nia reclined in the seat, allowing her head to gently rest against the window. The burden in her body transcended mere fatigue. It was the heaviness of understanding, the awareness that the boy who selflessly relinquished his last $1 had accomplished more than many adults ever could. He had laid eyes on her. Neither her attire, nor her injuries, nor her sense of hopelessness. She simply couldn't move past that. As the bus wound its way through Midtown, she felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. The service has resumed. She held it tightly, the fractured display illuminating with a flurry of missed calls, messages, and disorder. Her thumb lingered above the name Dad, yet she hesitated to press it. Instead, she lifted her camera and captured an image of the frayed slip adorned with her own handwriting, preserving the moment before the clamor of the world engulfed it. She would uncover his identity, not out of obligation, nor because it was expected, but because occasionally the universe shifted, if only a fraction, when a person chose to act with integrity. She was determined not to let it tip back without taking action in response. The following morning, the sun pierced through the Southfield haze for the first time in days, its light gentle yet distinct, as if it were attempting to illuminate something important. At Brayview Elementary, the front gates groaned as they opened to welcome the first few students of the day. Just before the morning bell chimed, a black SUV glided to a halt near the front office. It was out of place, absent from this place, not amidst the weathered minivans and battered sedans that typically filled the street. The engine ceased its roar, and Nia emerged, clad in understated attire, her hair neatly tied back, a delicate scarf concealing the bruise that marred her cheekbone. She stood tall, yet her fingers clutched the handle of her purse as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. Within the confines of the office, the secretary lifted her gaze, her expression a blend of intrigue and skepticism. Nia approached the desk, her voice steady yet assertive. "Greetings of the day. I am in search of a student by the name of Tyrese. He was supposed to disembark at the 6th and Grand Stop yesterday morning. I think he's in the 3rd grade." The secretary arched an eyebrow. "And who might you be?" Nia responded that it was someone he had assisted, a person eager to express their gratitude in a meaningful way. The woman at the desk faltered, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. "We do not disclose student information to individuals who are not family members," Nia replied with a soft understanding. "However, I don't require his file. Perhaps a discussion would suffice, or a means to communicate with his parents." A soft cough echoed from the hallway, breaking the silence. Marcus lingered at the threshold, clad in his delivery uniform, his gaze cautious. He had arrived to discuss the renewal of Tyrese's lunch assistance, but upon hearing the name, he suddenly became motionless. And now he found himself gazing at a woman whose face was unfamiliar, yet her eyes held a familiarity that suggested she knew him all too well. "I'm his dad," he declared, taking a step forward. Nia pivoted gradually, her gaze probing his. "You've nurtured an extraordinary child," she remarked gently. Marcus tensed up. What transpired? And thus, she revealed it to him. Concerning the bus, the dollar, and the napkin, she presented it plainly, without embellishment or idealization, allowing the truth to linger in the air between them. As she concluded, Marcus took a deep breath, averting his gaze momentarily, fighting against the warmth that threatened to spill from his eyes. "I want to assist," Nia expressed, "just for this academic year. A scholarship, some support, nothing more unless you desire it." Marcus remained silent initially, but eventually he nodded once, slowly, as if embracing a grace he had never anticipated. By the end of that week, Tyrese remained blissfully unaware that the ground beneath him was beginning to change. He was aware only that his lunch tray featured 2 slices of pizza rather than 1, and for the first time in months, he had managed to eat breakfast without skipping it. The letter sent back home stated that he had received a temporary scholarship due to his character and financial need, but the formal wording held little significance for him. The expression on his father's face as he read it was what truly counted, a mix of astonishment and subtle relief, as if he had been holding his breath for an eternity and had just rediscovered the art of exhaling. Yet, in the shadows, Nia advanced with a clear sense of intent. She contacted the school once more, conversed with the principal, reached out to a colleague at the local education board, and discreetly took care of Tyrese's tuition for the remainder of the year. She arranged for her company's outreach division to deliver new school supplies to the most underserved classrooms at Brayview, quietly and without any recognition. She sought anonymity, yearning for a shift, however small, in the balance of justice. What about Marcus? She also remembered him. Utilizing her network at VitechMed, she orchestrated a conversation, an authentic interview, not merely a request for assistance, with the facilities division. His experience in electrical work, along with years of various jobs and technical school credits, converged seamlessly like puzzle pieces he believed were long gone. In just a month, he secured a position as a junior technician, complete with benefits and a reliable paycheck. The moment he walked through the door clad in a uniform, his name emblazoned over his heart, Tyrese gazed at it as if it were a prized trophy. Their living space transformed as well. They transitioned from the chilly, creaky structure on 8th and Lenox to a humble 2-bedroom apartment close to the school. It lacked elegance, with worn carpet and peeling paint. However, the heating system functioned well, providing hot water that remained warm beyond just 5 minutes. The kitchen featured a table spacious enough to accommodate 2 plates, complemented by a genuine lamp hanging above. To Tyrese, it resembled a grand fortress. Occasionally, Nia would drop by. She always left quickly. She arrived with books, school supplies, or just to greet me. She and Marcus conversed as if they were well acquainted with the tougher aspects of existence, yet they chose not to articulate those thoughts openly. On a Friday morning, several months later, Braveview hosted its annual assembly for Kindness Week. Students were invited to compose a piece about an individual who had influenced them significantly. Tyrese stood at the podium, dressed in a crisp shirt and fresh shoes, his voice slightly trembling, yet his posture remained upright. "I'm not sure if what I did was really that significant," he remarked, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "I just encountered someone in need, and I had something to offer. My dad always says that no matter how small it may be, if you have the ability to give, you should do so." His voice wavered for a brief moment, yet he managed to smile. Sometimes that's the way the world transforms. Just a touch, but sufficient. In the rear of the room, Nia remained quiet next to Marcus, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes shimmering yet unwavering. They offered no more applause than the rest. However, it was unnecessary for them to do so. Come along and engage with us as we share impactful narratives by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Remember to activate the notification bell to begin your day with deep insights and genuine compassion.